interesse do público mundial por comida se revela no sucesso dos programas de TV sobre o assunto, comandados por chefes de cozinha nacionais ou estrangeiros, que se tornaram celebridades internacionais. Jornais, revistas, sites de internet dedicam cada vez mais espaço ao assunto, com foco maior em receitas ou maneiras de preparar os pratos. Por ironia, as pessoas se alimentam de forma cada vez pior, engordam, adoecem. Os ingredientes em uso pelos chefes de TV e por nós em casa, por exemplo, nem sempre são mais frescos e saudáveis. Às vezes, nos fazem mal, resultado da produção em massa de alimentos sob controle das multinacionais da comida. A refeição rápida, modelo americano, se espalha pelo mundo, onde as pessoas dedicam menos tempo a cozinhar, usam alimentos prontos. É o modo de vida agitado e que as pessoas não têm tempo para cozinhar, ou pelo menos dizem que não têm. A questão da comida vai além da apreciação do paladar. Envolve aspectos políticos, econômicos, ambientais, médicos. A prioridade dos grandes produtores de alimento não é a nutrição, e sim o lucro, denuncia o pesquisador americano Michael Pollan, autor de livros como Cozinhar e Em Defesa da Comida, entre muitos artigos que atraem a ira das multinacionais do alimento. Ele não é um radical da comida, nem macrobiótico, nem vegetariano, mas é um crítico da indústria de alimentos que, segundo ele, perpetua hábitos de superalimentação e consumo de ingredientes que contribuem para uma epidemia de obesidade e diabetes em vários países. As pessoas hoje comem sem estar com fome, diz ele. Comem para se distrair, por tédio e até por solidão. Pollan mora em Berkeley, na Califórnia, onde dá aula de jornalismo na universidade local. No tempo que sobra entre as muitas atividades ligadas à comida, inclusive uma viagem ao Brasil para participar da Flip, a festa literária de Paraty. Michael, your research about food understandably concentrates on American production and consumption, but you alert us that the American way of eating, fast and based on processed food, is spreading worldwide. And we do indeed see it here in Brazil, as in other countries. What sort of problems come with that American style of eating?
Well, there are several problems that come out of eating the way we do in America. The first, I think, and most important, is public health. We have, in the United States, rates of diabetes that were at 1 or 2% 30 years ago are up to 8% now. What we used to call adult onset diabetes, we now have to call type 2 diabetes because the onset is now happening in children. This is unprecedented. There were virtually no cases of type 2 diabetes in children 20 or 30 years ago, and now the numbers are very high. Overweight, obesity, all the chronic diseases linked to diet are really what we spend our health care money on. In the United States, approximately 75% of spending on health care goes to treat preventable chronic diseases. Not all of those are linked to food. There's smoking, for example, and alcohol, but most of them are. So when you hear things like the healthcare crisis or the healthcare cost crisis in the United States, what you should really be hearing is the catastrophe of the American diet. And that diet is being exported. And you're starting to see it in the developing world. You're starting to see it, throughout Europe. China is starting to eat a lot like Americans. And with that will come these completely avoidable and immiserating healthcare problems.
But this impact on our health goes together with the very fact that people are living longer nowadays.
Yeah.
Where is that contradiction leading to? How do you explain that? People are living longer, but at the same time they're getting sick.
Yeah. Well, in the United States, which I know much more about than life expectancy in places like Brazil, most of the gain in life expectancy has come in the first few years. That infant mortality, we have managed to reduce that with the use of better hygiene and antibiotics and things like that. About our life expectancy has gone up about 17 years in the last century or so, or 50 years. And about 10 years of that comes at the beginning of life. And then another 7 years has been achieved with improved healthcare at the end of life. Better treatments for heart disease, better treatments for cancer. We can keep people alive longer, but at enormous expense when they have these chronic diseases.
So you eat poorly, but the doctors take care of you.
Yeah, and essentially we medicalize the crisis of the diet. And it serves many people's interests. I think that's an important thing to understand, that the food industry is creating a very good business opportunity for the healthcare industry. And in the United States, you see diabetes emerging as a wonderful business opportunity. You know, look, it's the genius of capitalism to create a problem, and then rather than ever go back and fix the problem at the source, you create a new business to solve the problem. And we're doing that with public health. Is that sustainable? Well, economically it's not. And then, of course, you have the whole environmental crisis linked to this way of eating. This industrial diet, as I call it, has a very large carbon footprint, very large environmental footprint in general. It's very high energy. In America, we now take, a calorie is just a unit of energy, right? You could measure the calories in food or the calories that your car uses to drive. So the amount of calories it takes to produce 1 calorie of food energy, now in America it takes 10 calories of fossil fuel to produce 1 calorie of food. If you go back pre-World War II, for every calorie of fossil fuel energy you put into the food system, in the form of diesel for the farm equipment or propane gas to dry the grain, for every calorie of fossil fuel you put in, you got 2.3 calories of food out. So you got more out than you put in. Now we lose 9 calories for every calorie of food we get. It's a very energy-intensive diet. Most of that comes in the fertilizer that we use to grow the soybeans, to grow the corn. And that, I think, is something that we can't afford to do, because food by its nature is a solar process, right? I mean, it's based on photosynthesis. The sunlight feeds the leaves, feeds the plants, and the plants feed us. And it really is a free lunch, as we call it in America, because you're getting something for nothing when you do it right. But we've turned food into, instead of that wonderful solar system, we've turned it into another fossil fuel guzzling technology. And that seems a shame, given what it is at its
The food industry has an argument that a lot of people are familiar with. They say, the population worldwide is growing so much, and the production of food needs to keep up with that. Therefore, you need big agricultural production, agribusiness, heavyweight.
Yeah.
You buy that?
There's some logical problems there. I mean, one thing people don't realize, first of all, when you process food, it's very, very wasteful, and that you can feed more people on simpler food. I mean, the McDonald's way of eating is not feeding more people. But at the farm level, we know that small, diversified farms produce more food per hectare or acre than large industrial farms. What the large industrial farms can do is to produce all that food energy without any people. They're efficient in terms of labor. They're not efficient in terms of land. And so if you have people on the land in diversified farms, you can feed more people. The other important point about this feed the world argument, I mean, we do hear this argument that we must continue down this path in order to feed the world. And there's a few problems with that idea. One is, well, we now have the supposedly highly productive industrial agriculture, but we still have 1 billion people hungry on this planet. Even though we're growing nearly 3,000 calories of food per person per day. That tells you something. It tells you that it's not just about quantity of food. It's about the distribution. It's about who has the money to buy it.
It's interesting that you're so critical of agribusiness, which here in Brazil has managed to convey an image of modernity, where modern agriculture, a big contributor to the national economy? Is that just business ideology, propaganda?
Well, that's true. I mean, the good comes with the bad. I mean, it has contributed to economic growth. There's no question. It's contributed to various kinds of efficiency. I mean, if you value efficiency as your highest goal, you can look at the system and say, "Wow, it's very efficient." If you consider resilience your highest goal, say a system that can sustain itself for a very long time and doesn't have contradictions that are going to lead to breakdowns and public health crises, then it's a less positive system. I see virtues in this system, but I think we need to be much more honest about the costs of going down this path.
The model is there.
The model is there.
And being copied.
Yeah. And
of course, to control that, you need regulations, you need strong laws, but then you have to deal with the farm lobby. You're very critical of the farm lobby in the U.S. Obviously, there's a farm lobby here as well. In our Congress, there's what we call the rural bloc.
Yeah.
That obviously, by nature, it tries to avoid legislation that goes against its interests.
Yeah, and we have that too.
It's a very powerful lobby, isn't it?
Without question. Most of our agricultural policies are decided in Congress by these two committees, one in the House, one in the Senate. They tend to be controlled by big farming states in the Midwest, the Corn Belt, we call it. Even though these policies affect people like you and me, they affect eaters. They create the rules for the whole food game. No one on these committees represents eaters. They only represent the largest farmers because grain is at the bottom of the food chain. Corn, maize in the United States is how we make meat. We feed all the animals corn. Corn is how we make soda. It's how we sweeten our soda. It's how we make all the processed food. It all begins with corn and soya. So if you're Pepsi or Coca-Cola or McDonald's, you have an interest in seeing grain prices kept very low and showering the farmers who grow it with money to keep the prices down. This is not operating in the public interest. But sooner or later, we will need to reconcile our agricultural policies with our health policies and our environment policies. Because right now they're operating at complete cross purposes.
You need to connect the dots, though.
Connecting the dots is exactly what we need to do. And this is something that I think Obama understands. His wife certainly understands. Michelle Obama really understands the food issue well. But Obama himself has indicated he understands it. And that you can't be, at the same time, supporting cheap sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup, that's our important sweetener, and the war on diabetes. Because you're essentially you're supporting both sides in the war on diabetes. You're creating diabetes with one hand and you're curing it with another. It's absurd. It's crazy.
Oi, é com você mesmo. Quer conquistar seu espaço no sofá do Estúdio I? Olha, não é exatamente no sofá, mas eu acho que é até melhor. É aqui, junto comigo. Acesse g1.com.br/Globo